Oh, you're the one that lives in that house. Oh, that's your house. Oh. You remember you let me in that house 10 years ago and you hadn't done anything yet? I'm like, oh, yeah, sure.
My name is Daniel Kanter, and this is my neighbor and one of my dear friends, John. John and I met 8 years ago, just a day after I bought my house in uptown Kingston, New York. We've been helping each other and trading renovation secrets ever since. Today, we're pouring a couple of drinks and taking you on a tour of John's ongoing stone house restoration, a local Kingston landmark built over 50 years before the Revolutionary War.
It's become my personality. I love it.
We're looking at about 1723 here. This house was originally built by the Dutch, and it was built as a tavern. It was pretty much kind of in the middle of nowhere because the heart of Kingston is still a couple of blocks up. When I found this house, one of the first things I thought, like, oh my God, I could be in this house for the rest of my life and never be finished with everything that I want to do. And it will keep me occupied, and it will keep me entertained, and it will keep me financially unstable for as long as I live.
I remember sitting around the dinner table and when I was a little kid, and the question went around, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I so remember saying, I want to be an architect, because I saw Brady Bunch and Dad Brady was being an architect, and I can do that. And one of the older family members, they looked at me and they said, T, what you need an architect degree to build a barn for?
When you have an old house and you have an old floor, and you have to really be careful how you refinish them, and you should never put a belt sander or any type of electric sander on a floor like these. You have to hand scrape them. And it's pretty amazing. I kind of taught myself. I hand scraped the entire floor from upstairs all the way through the 1850 section, which is probably about a 45 foot, 6 foot wide. Yeah, that was fun. That took about 4 or 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In your free time.
It
should probably be mentioned. Yeah, it should probably be mentioned. John is not a restoration architect. John is not an interior designer by trade. John is an optometrist who just happens to also be a powerhouse talent and a beauty. So.
Well, I'm originally from Tennessee.
Really?
Yes.
Which part?
Middle part of the state, yeah. Farmland, grew up on a farm. I can remember being out there on that tractor in the middle of the field during the middle of summer for hours, and I was thinking, if I can ever get out of here, I'm moving to New York. I am moving to New York. And I did.
So, there seems to be, in my mind, a debate as to whether this house was built in 1723 or 1726. Some of the paperwork and some of the old books I see, they say 1726. The reason I still stick with the 1723 is because you see the stone up here between the two windows? You can see where the mason who was building this actually chiseled into that stone 23 and then chiseled his initials underneath it.
So we go from 1723
to 1850 with brick made here in Kingston. So this is the front of the house. When we look at things here, if you look at the shutters on top, they have louvers. The ones on the bottom don't. It's because they were actually functional shutters, and they used them. They used them every night. They'd pull the shutters too. They would use it for heat control, for light control, and it really was an integral part of the house, and not just shutters as we know them now.
The way since about post-war
Mhm.
that we are used to seeing shutters as Americans is screwed right onto the house and outside of the casing. It's wrong. It's all wrong.
It's
And
wrong.
so the reason that these look so good is in part because of the protrusion, which creates these beautiful shadows and all this nice stuff. But even if you're not aware of it, I think your eye can tell when something makes sense and when it doesn't. So here, these shutters, when they're closed, actually cover the window. And so
Yes.
each shutter is, half the size.
The other thing is the hardware. This is like the original hardware for these shutters, and these are called shutter dogs. So you turn it like that, then your shutter would actually close.
Never thought I was going to be into history, but it's like learning a new language. Whenever you start to get into redoing an old house and getting into that genre, you learn Vanderoe in the mid-century, and then you learn all these other things. How they made a pancake hinge, in the 1700s. So it gives you a sense of place. That we're not the first ones here. There were people who knew how to do this better than we do now. We can approach it from a little different angle, but what they did was they built a house that lasted. This right here is where they knocked a hole in the stone house to add on the back part of the house. You see how thick this wall is? This is the brick wall of the 1850s edition, this thick. Whereas this right here was the thickness of the stone wall of the 1723 to 26. Right there. They built these things to last. They have torn one down since I've been in town, and it was incredibly hard for them to push all the walls in because it was they were just so thick. So from here, Myron Teller, who was an architect that lived here in Kingston, he was really big in colonial hardware, and he came through these stone houses in town, and in a way he's credited with saving them because so many of them were being torn down because they weren't sufficient for modern life in the 1820s to 1850s. So he comes in, he replicates hardware, and then he puts in cabinets and closets in a lot of these houses because they didn't have any before that.
Myron Teller is a really significant figure in Kingston, specifically for this house.
Mm-hmm.
When you say he replicated hardware, what we really mean is he started his own foundry, right?
Yes.
In
Oh,
Kingston
yes. Oh, yeah.
to replicate colonial era hardware.
If you really look at the hardware, you can find the Myron Teller stamp on it. But otherwise, if you didn't know, you wouldn't know the difference from the original. I mean, he's that good. So he put in bathrooms. Electricity had just come into town not too much before that. So, making sure they all had electricity, running water, and then dress those out appropriately. So it still felt colonial, and he made the hardware to match the hardware that was on the doors and on the hinges. Myron Teller is really the one that saved this house so it's here today. These boards right here are from the original stone house. That's just fill-in pieces, and this is from 1850. And to get it all to blend, or to have the feel of it, I had Amelia paint the floor. And it's fun doing research on something that has always painted floors in 1820, but it's out there if you look. Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
You want to do
my last place.
Yeah.